The Untold Story of Biafra, a nation that almost was. Welcome to a story that changed the course of Nigerian history, one that left a lasting impact on not just a country, but an entire continent. This is the Untold Story of Biafra, a nation that almost was. Settle in, because over the course of this series, we're going to dive into the events, the people, the war, and the legacy of Biafra, a republic that fought for its independence in a time of great upheaval. Our story begins in the years leading up to the Nigerian Civil War. In the early 1960s, Nigeria had just gained independence from Britain in 1960, and the new nation was hopeful. But underneath the surface, tensions simmered between Nigeria's different ethnic groups, mainly the Igbo in the east, the Hausa-Fulani in the north, and the Yoruba in the west. After a series of coups and counter-coups in 1966, the country was left divided, and the Igbo people in the southeast began to feel increasingly marginalized and threatened. This led to the declaration of the Republic of Biafra in May 1967 by the military leader, Colonel Odumegwu Ojukwu. It was a bold move, a call for independence by the Igbo people. But it also set the stage for a brutal civil war that would last for 3 years. In this episode, we'll explore the series of events that led to the secession of Biafra from Nigeria and the eventual declaration of the Republic of Biafra in 1967. Nigeria in the 1960s was a country filled with hope and promise after gaining independence from British colonial rule in 1960. But beneath that hope, deep ethnic and political tensions were brewing, setting the stage for one of Africa's most devastating civil conflicts. Let's break down the causes step by step. Nigeria was, and still is, home to over 250 ethnic groups, but 3 major ethnic groups dominated: the Hausa-Fulani in the north, the Yoruba in the west, and the Igbo in the east. These 3 groups had distinct cultures, languages, and political systems. The British colonial rulers had maintained a form of indirect rule, keeping ethnic divisions largely intact. When independence arrived, these differences did not simply disappear, but became part of a new struggle for power. Tensions began to simmer. The Hausa-Fulani in the north were largely Muslim, and their political leaders wanted to maintain dominance and control over Nigeria's political system. The Yoruba in the west were primarily Christian and Muslim, and they had a well-developed political system of their own, aspiring for significant influence. The Igbo in the east, predominantly Christian, had a strong emphasis on education and business, which often made them a key player in Nigeria's growing economy, but it also caused envy and tension, especially in the north. After independence in 1960, Nigeria adopted a federal system with regions based on ethnicity. The Northern People's Congress (NPC), dominated by Hausa-Fulani elites, controlled the central government under Prime Minister Sir Abubakar Tafawa Balewa, while the Action Group (AG), led by the Yoruba, and the National Council of Nigeria and the Cameroons (NCNC), led by the Igbo, vied for regional power. The NPC's dominance, due to the larger population in the north, caused unrest in the other regions. Corruption, rigging of elections, and ethnic favoritism only worsened tensions. Political rivalry and struggles for power. In the western region, internal conflicts led to a split in the Yoruba-dominated Action Group, which resulted in violent clashes known as the Wild Wild West Crisis of 1965. The eastern region, dominated by the NCNC and led by Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, felt politically marginalized by the northern elites who controlled the central government. As political instability worsened, a group of young, mostly Igbo, army officers staged Nigeria's first military coup on January 15, 1966. The coup was led by Major Chukwuma Kaduna Nzeogwu, and its primary aim was to end the corruption and power struggles that were tearing the country apart. Events of the first coup: Prime Minister Tafawa Balewa, Premier of the northern region Ahmadu Bello, and Premier of the western region Samuel Akintola were all assassinated. President Nnamdi Azikiwe, an Igbo, was out of the country during the coup and was spared. Although the coup plotters claimed their intention was to end corruption and create a better Nigeria, the fact that many northern leaders were killed, while southern leaders, particularly Igbo leaders, were spared, raised ethnic suspicions, especially in the north. Following the coup, General Johnson Aguiyi-Ironsi, an Igbo military officer, took control as the new head of state. His government was seen as Igbo-dominated, and his attempt to centralize Nigeria by abolishing the federal structure through Decree No. 34, which turned Nigeria into a unitary state, was deeply unpopular, especially in the northern region. Backlash in the north, northern elites and military officers feared that Ironsi's policies would solidify Igbo dominance in the government and economy. Widespread protests and dissatisfaction in the north led to growing ethnic tensions. Many northerners felt they were being marginalized and that their leaders had been unjustly killed in the January coup. Just 6 months later, on July 29, 1966, northern military officers staged a counter-coup. This coup was violent and bloody, particularly targeting Igbo military officers. Events of the counter-coup: General Aguiyi-Ironsi was captured and murdered by northern soldiers. Lieutenant Colonel Yakubu Gowon, a northern Christian from the Middle Belt, was installed as the new head of state. His appointment was an attempt to restore balance, but the north continued to assert dominance in the government. In the months following the counter-coup, ethnic violence escalated, particularly in the north. Thousands of Igbo civilians were massacred in northern cities such as Kano, Kaduna, and Jos. These massacres triggered a mass exodus of Igbo people back to the eastern region, where they sought safety and security. Growing calls for secession. As violence against the Igbo intensified, Colonel Odumegwu Ojukwu, the military governor of the eastern region, faced mounting pressure to protect his people. Ojukwu repeatedly sought a peaceful resolution and autonomy for the eastern region but was frustrated by Gowon's government, which was resistant to power sharing or regional autonomy. In an attempt to resolve the tensions, representatives from both the Nigerian government and the eastern region met in Aburi, Ghana, in January 1967. The Aburi Conference appeared to offer a way forward, as agreements were reached on a form of confederation that would give more autonomy to each region. However, when Ojukwu returned to Nigeria, he found that Gowon's government had backtracked on the agreements made in Aburi, further deepening the sense of betrayal and mistrust between the eastern region and the central government. With the failure of negotiations and ongoing massacres of Igbo people in the north, Colonel Odumegwu Ojukwu took a historic step. On May 30, 1967, Ojukwu officially declared the Republic of Biafra, a new independent state for the Igbo people, encompassing the eastern region. Who were Ojukwu's subordinates? Brigadier Hilary Njoku, Chief of Staff of the Biafran Armed Forces. Colonel Joseph Akuzi, key military commander known as the Air Raid. Colonel Alexander Madiabo, commander of the Biafran Army. Major General Philip Effiong, Ojukwu's deputy and later successor in leading the Biafran forces. Ojukwu's decision was met with joy and relief in the eastern region, but viewed as an act of rebellion by the Nigerian government. This act of secession was the spark that ignited the Nigerian Civil War, also known as the Biafran War, which would rage for the next 3 years, leaving deep scars on Nigeria's history. Thank you so much for joining us in this first episode of the Untold Story of Biafra. We've just begun peeling back the layers of a truly fascinating and complex part of history. From the early days of independence to the coups that set the stage for the conflict, there's so much more to uncover. But we're curious, what do you think about the actions of the leaders we've talked about so far? Was the path to Biafra inevitable, or could something have been done differently? We'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. Your voice matters as we journey through this story together. Stay tuned, because in the next episode, we're going even deeper into the declaration of Biafra and the beginning of the war. Trust us, you don't want to miss it. See you soon. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to see more content like this and keep unraveling the true history of Biafra, be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any new uploads. Your support helps us continue sharing these important stories. See you in the next video.